I thought I'd do kind of a fun video today, and this is probably as much for me as it is anybody else. What I want to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about the instruments that I have hanging on the wall back here behind me. A lot of you, if you watch my videos, you know that I had a dramatic life change 2 years ago. I had to move from the ranch where I'd been living for 25 years, and everything just went into turmoil. I ended up selling a lot of guitars that I had because I just, first of all, I needed money to live on while all this was happening. And then, second of all, I didn't know if I was ever going to work on guitars again, that sort of thing. So, most of the instruments that I have are not really personal instruments, but they're for the shop. I used them for tax deductions, basically because they're tools. And one year I had to pay quite a bit of taxes, and I said, "Man, I could have bought a guitar." And my CPA said, "Yeah, uh, you can buy a guitar. You can use it as a tool and put it in your videos, or use it as a study sort of thing. And it's just like a piece of equipment. It's just like buying a bandsaw or table saw or anything like that. It's a piece of equipment." So I started doing that. I started buying guitars that I thought were useful to the shop, and then I sold some of them, and that kind of thing. But I had some comments. God, you have so many instruments. Yeah, I work on guitars professionally, and so having like the authentic that I'm going to get out here is very, very useful to me as a model, something to study the bracings on. Um, and as a comparison tool for videos, I have a consistent guitar that I use in every video so that you can get a feel for how this guitar compares to the same guitar that's been in every other video. So, I sold a lot of instruments when I left, when I moved, when all that happened. I've had over the years, let's sort of start from like the top that I can think of. I had a D28 1937 Authentic. It was in a lot of videos. Awesome guitar. I sold that one. I had a D28 1941 Authentic, and that was so useful to compare to the 37, so that people who were wondering, which one should I get, I had a video for you, um, and on and on. I mean, it's in the videos there. I had a 1939 D18 Authentic, which was interesting. I like that guitar a lot. A customer loaned me a 37 aged Authentic, and a D28 37 aged Authentic, and a D18 39 aged Authentic, and I had those for like 6 months. I didn't own them, but I used them in a couple of videos for comparison. Sold, I gave those back to him. Then in the shop, I had 70s, all 70s here. I had a D35 that I fully modified, and I love that guitar. I probably would have kept that one, except for the fact that it had 2 1/8 of an inch bridge spacing, and I really like 2 1/4 inch spacing. Had I put 2 1/4 inch spacing on that one, I would have kept that guitar. That was a really good D35 that I modified, Then I had a 75 D28 that I was going to modify. Never got around to it, and the guy I bought it from, said, "Hey, you still have that guitar? I'd like to buy it back now that I'm in a financially better position." I said, "Well, I really like this guitar. I love the neck on it. But the fact is, I didn't need it. So I sold it back to him. I had done a little bit of work to it. He paid me for the work. I gave him the guitar back, but I sold that one. I had the 65 D21 that I swear I was, never going to sell because it was 14 serial numbers away from Buck's guitar, which was a guitar that literally changed my playing life. And I looked for decades for a D21. I found that D21, and when I got it in, much to my surprise, it was 14 serial numbers away from Buck's guitar, made on the same day. Actually, I take that back. Made on the same batch. I asked Martin about this. It was made on the same batch, but they overlapped a little bit. I can't remember if Buck's was started earlier and finished later. Whatever. They overlapped a little bit, but they were from the same batch of guitars, same wood, everything. I showed that. Sold that to a friend of mine, so I know where it lives and, that kind of thing. Sold that one. That was a tremendously good guitar. But honestly, as a shop guitar, the 65 D21 was strange because I couldn't compare it to anything. If it had been a D28, I could have compared it to something. But the 21 was it was a fantastic guitar all on its own. But in the shop, I couldn't really find a niche for it. You could compare the Brazilian, but the 21s are quirky, They have rosewood fingerboards, rosewood bridges, and things like that. So I couldn't really compare it to a D28, although I did one time. I compared it to 65 D28, and that was a cool video, A D21 versus a D28 of the same years. So I let that one go. Anyway, the guitars and the instruments that I have actually kept all have a story or a meaning or something significant about them that I ended up keeping them. And sometimes they're not worth much money. So a lot of, we'll get to that when we get to the electrics here. I put all these electrics together. They're parts guitars. They're not real Fenders or anything, but they're fun. But every guitar that I kept every instrument that I kept has a story, some kind of personal significance to me. And so I thought it'd just be kind of fun to go through these instruments kind of quickly and just show you why they're hanging on the wall behind me and why I kept them and why they're important instruments to me. So here we go. We're going to start with the acoustics and then I'll work over to the electrics, and feel free to skip around or, whatever. Like I say, this video is more for me than it is anything else because I have made videos of my instruments. And then, 20 years later, I look at them and I go, oh man, I remember that guitar, Or sometimes I'm glad I sold that guitar. Sometimes I wish I had that guitar still, things like that. It's just fun to go back and look at them and say, I remember that one, and fun to do. So, okay, first instrument we're going to look at here is my Proulx OM. This is made by Mario Proulx in Ontario, Canada, and he's not building a lot of guitars right now, so I'm glad I got this one. And plus with the whole NAFTA customs trade and anything, it is really, really difficult to get guitars out of Canada anymore. I basically, I helped design this guitar. I convinced Mario to make a small-bodied, serious flat-picking instrument. He was kind of opposed. I have a whole story on this, but he was kind of opposed to it at first. Then I convinced him. He sent me one guitar that was Indian rosewood, red spruce top, and he had a couple things for me to change, a couple things to try, this and that. How deep I want the body. I was taped pieces of cardboard on the back, and I said, I don't even want a piece of cardboard on the back. I want that thin body. This is good. This is number one right here. This is the first production OMD, and so obviously it's very special to me. This guitar was made for me, to my specifications, my desires, everything. So yeah, this is the one guitar. A lot of people are, how could you sell that 37 D28? I think, well, because it wasn't made for me. I complained about the neck every single time I did a video. And yeah, I could get used to it. But why? I've got this, a Proulx OMD that's made for me. So, the specs on this guitar, first of all, the back and sides are Southeast Asian rosewood, which was my favorite rosewood. When I met Mario Proulx, he had several guitars with him. They were all dreadnoughts, and he had several guitars with him, and one of them was a Southeast Asian dreadnought, and that was the one, man. I met him at IBMA 2000, year 2000. We roomed together, and I played that Southeast Asian dreadnought the entire week I was there. I didn't even look at the other one. I had a Brazilian, you know, that Southeast Asian, man. That was the one. It just had a cool sound. That's all I could tell you. So this was Southeast Asian rosewood. The bindings, God, I don't know what the bindings are. He uses a lot of weird woods. Sometimes I don't know the name of them. But the bindings are white, wood binding. These are all wood binding. Everything on this guitar is a wood binding. The neck is bound, and in the other video I just did the other day, I talked about how I like white bound fingerboards. This one's kind of yellow now, but it's a bound, wood bound fingerboard. You can see the dots on it. The top is, I don't remember what the top is. It's a red spruce type top. It might be white spruce. Might be something besides red spruce, but I know Mario chose it because it was a red spruce sort of top. He thought I would like it. It's not Sitka. It's something else. And like I said, he uses some strange woods that I would never think of. The bridge is Brazilian rosewood. The fingerboard is Boice de Rose, which is a cool wood. Again, I never heard of it. It's red, and then it ages off into this darker wood. The bridge is funny because when I first got the guitar, I thought, man, he put a rosewood bridge on it. That's terrible. So I took it off and I put an ebony bridge on it. And a day later, I took that ebony bridge off and put this Brazilian rosewood back on. Mario knew what he was doing. And that was what opened my eyes to the fact that I like rosewood bridges. It was snappy, poppy, brighter sounding. Gosh, So the ebony bridge didn't last very long on this guitar. Let's see what else. I haven't changed anything else on it. The bridge it has fossil walrus ivory bridge pins on it, which are shaved down so that the heads are way down in there. I've tried other pins on this, and I found snakewood works really good, but I like the weight of the fossil walrus ivory, and I believe that these were made by Dan Lashbrook, who I forgot to mention in one of my videos about who is Brian Kimsey, and I mentioned the various influences that I've had, and I swear I forgot to mention Dan Lashbrook. And Dan, one of the very first mentors, that I had, I swapped a lot of ideas and information with him. I don't agree with everything he says now. It's not the direction and sound that I want to go, which is fine. I'm not saying I don't agree with him. I'm just saying I go a different direction and sound than he does. But Dan Lashbrook was key to opening my eyes to some of the things, the modifications and things. And I am fairly certain that Dan cut these bridge pins, and I got them from a customer who said, "Here, if you have any use for these, use them." I put them in this guitar, and wow, I just really liked them. I like the weight of that fossil walrus ivory on this guitar because this is a small-bodied guitar, and increasing the sustain a little bit is a good thing, So, anyway, this is my number one. This is my number one Proulx OM Southeast Asian rosewood or whatever, red spruce top. The neck is kind of funny. Mario and I miscommunicated on the neck specs. When it came in, it had this massive chunky neck because I had given him the measurements I wanted of the playing depth. So I had strings, frets, and neck. This is how deep I want that neck to be. So, in other words, if you had really tall frets, it changes your effective playing depth. And Mario thought I was measuring from the fingerboard. So he gives me this big, fat, chunky neck, and I hated it. I played it. I didn't even play the guitar for a long time. I got it in maybe, I think, March or April or something, took it to Kaufman Camp that year. I gave it as a loaner to people whose guitars I was working on. And I said, here, take this guitar. You can take it to class with you. Which is another thing about having, why I would buy some guitars. I'd use them as loaners, you know. If I had somebody's guitar for a couple months, or if I was at Kaufman Camp or something, I'd have 2 or 3 guitars, and I could say, here, take this to class with you. You can play it, you know. You know, how many people do that for you, you know? So anyway, I took it to Kaufman Camp, had this big matching neck on it. Finally, Winfield was coming up that year, and I thought, I'm going to take this guitar to Winfield. Mario and I had talked a lot about, here, give me another neck, and, you know, whatever. And I thought, the day before I was leaving for Winfield, I thought, why don't I just shave this neck down, and then he can give me another neck later on, you know? Because what are we going to do with this big fat neck? Somebody's going to have to shave it down. So I shaved it down, and I threw just a real quick stain and a real quick French polish finish on it. There's chatter marks right up in here where my shaver skipped, and I didn't even sand it or anything. I just shaved it, threw a finish on there, went to Winfield, and that was 2002. Winfield 2002, because that's when this guitar was made. I have not touched the neck since. I got that profile so exactly right on the first shot. I have not touched it since. I thought, well, I'm going to come back in and I'm going to, you know, sand out those little skips and smooth. No, forget it. I haven't touched it. So it's funny, you know. People look at that and they're, oh, man, look at that finish, you know. And Mary, I didn't do that. I did that. I just can't believe how comfortable I got that neck on the first crack. I played this guitar at Winfield. I had a Collins Clarence White, Brazilian Rosewood. I played that, which I had played for 7 years up to this point. And I took it out of the case for 10 minutes. And this was the only guitar I played. So, the Proulx OM #1. I'm not going to talk this much about the rest of the instruments, but this is my #1 guitar. So, all right, here we go. Okay, Proulx OM. Well, this is my #1 mandolin. This is a Elkhorn. It is serial number 27, made 8/10, so 2010. I have a whole video on this mandolin in which I tell the entire story about this and why it's my favorite mandolin. But the quick version of that story, it's made by a friend of mine, Rob Brophy, who I went to South Plains College with. That's music school. I had heard back about 2010 that he was making mandolins and that they were really good. I really wanted to see one. And so I just kind of kept my eyes open for him. Anyway, my son, David, passed away at age 11. And at the funeral, a bunch of friends of mine were there, and a couple of them came from Oklahoma City. And so I said, you guys, you know, bring instruments with you? And they said, well, we're here, aren't we? And of course we brought instruments. And I asked them to play music at the gravesite, which, of course, they agreed to do, you know, being friends. So we're there standing at the gravesite, and my friend John pulls out an Elkhorn mandolin. And, of course, I didn't get a chance to, you know, look at it or anything like that then. They took off. And so I think a year later, I went to Kaufman Camp, and I went as a camper for the first time ever. I was still trying to get over, David's death and everything, and I'm just starting to feel like a human being again. So I went to Kaufman Camp, and I'm coming back from one of the concerts, and I left early because I was kind of tired, and so I just left early. And I'm walking down, and there's this, in the dorm rooms, there's a light on this one window, and I look over, and there's a friend of mine, who I know is a really good mandolin player, has a lot of mandolins. I walk in, and he's got this tree of mandolins on a stand, and one of them is an Elkhorn. And I said, "Where'd you get that mandolin?" And he said, "I got that from John." And so I told him the story. John played that at my son's funeral, and if you ever sell it or something, I'd sure like to know. I probably can't afford to buy it, but I'd like to have, first right of refusal. And I had my other mandolin with me, my Chris shot, which John Beaver had also gotten for me. So I was able to compare them, and I could see that this mandolin had something to add to the stable, apart from sentimental value and everything. It had a woodier tone and a bigger neck on it, and gosh, I really liked it, just as a mandolin. And then the fact that it was at David's funeral, you just made it, and made by Rob, just kind of pushed it over the edge there. So I told him that. Anyway, long story short, I ended up trading a 1965 D28 that I was forced to buy from someone. I ended up trading that to him for this mandolin. And so it's interesting because I probably would have never written the check for it, just too painful. But having already bought the D28, which was a guitar that he was looking for, because he emailed me and said specifically, "I'm looking for a mid to late 60s D28. And there I had one in my hand that I was getting ready to sell. And I said, "I've got one right here, and it's ready to go, So we ended up swapping, and he ended up paying me the difference, which, how can the thing work out any better? So this is my Elkhorn mandolin. A couple of years after I had it, life wasn't easy on this thing. A couple of years after I had it, the top split. And, I was just, devastated. That's David's mandolin, So I did a really cool, unique repair on that. And that's been 8 or 9 years now that I fixed that top. So I like this mandolin a lot, obviously. Number one, this is an Elkhorn. This mandolin has a Sam Bush, Bill Monroe sound compared to my other mandolin, which is a Chris shot, which it's in Los Alamos right now. This one's got an open, woodier sound. I found it really good for that kind of thing. It's just, boy, that's what it has that the Chris shot doesn't have. The Chris shot is a clear, cleaner, more balanced instrument, whereas this one just has this woody, open tone to it. And it's terrific neck. When I got it, the neck, after I played it for a while, the neck had a little bit of like a curve in it, where it's fatter up in here and fatter here and skinnier here. And I found out by calipering it. And Rob's kind of not a caliper guy, and I'm an extreme caliper guy. So I did reshape the neck a little bit, took a little bit of wood off right there, and then put a French polish finish on it. I changed the tailpiece. I didn't like the tailpiece, but refretted it. He had fat frets on it, and I don't like fat frets. I like thin frets. So I refretted it with gold Evo wire, which they make a real thin fret. And that's it. Just a couple things that tuned it into me. So what a great mandolin. This is number one. This one and the Proulx. If I showed everything in here, these are the two I would keep: the Elkhorn and the Proulx, and I'd be done with it. So, all right. This is an octave mandolin. I did a video on this. Thoughts on the octave mandolin. I had a mandola too. I just sold the mandola on Reverb, and that's because I hadn't discovered the octave mandolin when I bought the mandola. The mandola I showed was really, really good. I mean, it was an Eastman. The craftsmanship was just spectacular on it. The price was great on it, but I talk about that in the video about thoughts on. I talk about the mandola versus mandolin, and thoughts on octave mandolin is why I never really played the mandola. But anyway, once I got to the octave mandolin, that's what I was kind of looking for as far as something that's not a regular bluegrass mandolin. So these are really popular mandolins. This is what the MD0305 octave mandolin is. A super simple little thing, tater bud deal. They run about $800 or so. They're not a big deal. And I bought it as a shop instrument to use as an example to study octave mandolins so that I know something about octave mandolins in case I ever get to work on them. I've done absolutely nothing to this one. It was perfect when it came in. The nut height was perfect. The spacing was excellent. Everything's really good on this thing. Octave mandolin, and I really can't play it. I did spend more time fussing around with the octave mandolin. I have a whole video on it where I talk about the fact I wouldn't play it like a mandolin. I'd play it like an octave mandolin. It's got characteristics on it that are unique to an octave mandolin, and I feel that every instrument ought to have those characteristics exploited. You ought to play to the instrument's strength. So what I really like this for is when I'm doing solo gigs, playing in restaurants or something like that. I take this along because it has such a unique sound to it. So I like to do Irish tunes on it, even though they're nothing like Irish tunes. Nobody in the restaurant ever knows that. They just hear this kind of neat sound. So, that kind of sound. It's cool, You get these cool drones going on here. That kind of thing. This is fun. This is an instrument that I just pull off the wall when I want to do something fun. I don't really know my way around on it, and I just sit there and play by ear. Because I have a hearing loss, it took me a very, 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 very long time to trust my ear, and I still don't trust my ear. I use a tab, music theory. I use everything that I can, but these kind of things make me use my ear, and even more so when we get to the resonator guitar here, which we're going to hit just now. So this is octave mandolin. It's not a big investment, and that's why I kept it around, because it's fun, it's relaxing, it's something different. It's something I don't really know anything about, and so therefore when I sit down and play with the octave mandolin, I don't feel pressured to do anything great on it. I'm just gonna fool around with it. So it's a relaxing instrument. So Eastman, these are really good. They're fun. You might have seen this sitting back here on a stand, and this is a gold tone, right? This is a gold tone. No, this is a Regal. This is a Regal. I thought it was a ghost tone. Anyway, this is a Regal resonator. It's a round back, so it's a guitar neck sort of thing. I bought this. This is a shop instrument, and I bought this specifically so that I could learn how resonators work. I got it used on Reverb. It cost me, I think, $400. It was a floor model. It's perfect condition. I don't know why. Yeah, they could have sold it as new easily, but anyway, it was $400. I upgraded the terrible tuners that it came with, and these are Grover 18-to-1s on it now, which are a whole lot better tuners. I'm not big on tuners, you know. I don't sit here cranking tuners back and forth, but on the resonator, I actually do, because one of the things that I do is just make up a tuning on this thing. And I'm sure I'm not making up anything there. I'm sure these tunings are everybody knows all about them. But I sit there and I wonder, what happens if I tune it to this and I tune it to that, and then I sit there and play around with it and see what kind of sounds and noises I can make out of it. So I actually do end up tuning this one quite a bit, although it stayed in this tuning for quite a while. I think it's open G now. It sounds like open G. I think it's an open G. So I replaced the tuners, and I also replaced the spider and the cone with one from Stu Mack. I can't remember if that's a Beard or the other really popular one. Beard. Who's the other guy? I'll remember in a minute. I can't remember which one I did it with. But I thought I wanted to see. Well, first, you know, the whole purpose of this thing was to learn about resonators. So taking it apart and putting, you know, replacing the parts with something else, see what difference that made in the sound. Oh, it made quite a bit of difference in the sound. Pretty good now. I mean, it's. You know, I have a total of probably $500 in this now because I already had the tuners. In fact, those might even have been used tuners that I had left over. So I kept this one simply because it's fun, it's different. It's a lot like that octave mandolin back there. Well, I don't even know what I'm doing on this thing. I just sit down and play with it. I got a slide. I don't know the first thing about slide playing. I don't study this. I don't do anything. I just sit down. A lot of times I put a movie or a TV show or something on, I turn the sound off, and I sit there and I play blues resonator to it because it's relaxing, it's fun. So. See. Just stuff like that. I just sit there and make up stuff. It's funny though. Listen to Muddy Waters a lot. Listen to a lot of the old blues guys that play slide, and it's funny. I mean, you sit here and mess around with this, and you'll hear that lick, and you go, "Oh yeah, you know that's." You know, I came up. I don't remember, you know, but anyway, so that's really all I do with this. It's again, it's an instrument that makes me use my ear. I don't even know what notes those are. You know, I sit there and I could figure it out. I just play around with it. It's just a relaxing thing that I'm never going to be good at. I don't want to be good at, and I just sit there and play. Same thing for an hour. I use hybrid picking on this. Flat pick and fingers because it's good practice for hybrid picking. You know. That's what I keep. I don't think I'll ever let go of this one. I thought about selling it, and then I got it out and I played it, and I'm like, why? You know, I'm gonna get $400 or $500 for it, tops. It's a lot of fun. Again, it's a relaxing thing where I pick it up and I don't feel like I have to do anything um, spectacular. Guitar, I have all this knowledge. Then I feel like I have to play something significant. But on this, I don't know anything. I don't even know what notes I'm playing. I'm just sitting here making noise on it, playing tunes. So I like this. It's fun. It's a Regal. This, of course, is an electric bass guitar. This is a Squier. And this is the one they call the P-Bass Special. It's got a P-Bass pickup on here and a jazz pickup. And I think it has the jazz neck. It's the slightly slimmer neck. I've had this thing for a long time. I mean, 20 years or so. I bought it on eBay. I bought it from somebody because they couldn't get the truss rod to stay steady. I think I paid $100 for it. So I verified that, yeah, sure enough, you can't get the relief would never stay. You'd sit there and crank it in, adjust it, and within 10 minutes it would have massive release again. So because I was just getting started in Lutherie work, repair work at that time, I decided to fix it. So I took the fingerboard off. And I found out that the truss rod on this is just a single rod, which is not nearly enough strength to hold an electric bass. So I put a Luthier's Mercantile single action truss rod on it. So that sticks down to here. And I think it used to adjust up here. And an LMI rod adjusts down here at the heel. So I've got a heel adjustment now. Also, while I was doing that, laid carbon fiber alongside the truss rod, which was the first time I'd ever done that. And I still do that on Martin guitars sometimes. If I ever replace the square tube truss rod with a Luthier's Mercantile rod, I put carbon fiber on either side of that rod to really stiffen it so that the rod doesn't do all the work. The rod will just fine-tune that. Okay, the point is, I did that on this one. Got carbon fiber strips running up and down on either side of that thing. I got the relief adjusted, and I didn't touch it again. That's it. It made this neck so stiff that it never needs adjusting. Because I took the fingerboard off, all the frets popped off, and they were low frets anyways. I refretted it, which was the first time, over 20 years ago. I didn't know very much about fretting. In fact, I need to go back in and resheet some of these frets because I know some of them are not seated as good as I do these days. So anyway, got the neck fixed, and I had an electric bass to play. And I actually play electric bass once in a while. The note knowledge transfers over from guitar, and I listen to bass players a lot. Anytime I'm listening to, electric blues or anything. I mean, when I listen to Stevie Ray Vaughan, I listen to Tommy Shannon is much or more than I actually listen to Stevie. I listen to Tommy and Chris Layton. I listen to that rhythm section. And in my humble opinion, those guys were a huge contributing factor to Stevie Ray's sound. I listen to that bass a lot. Doesn't mean I can play it, but I listen to bass a lot. Very aware of bass notes and what's going on. Bass is fun. It's like all these other instruments here. I don't aspire to be a great bass player. I just play bass. Put it in the pocket there. Try to make a good run once in a while. And I'm there to lay down the bottom end. I find bass playing to be very relaxing in a gig because I can sit there and play bass. And I can listen to the band, And as a guitar player, I'm like, what kind of lead am I going to play? What kind of lick am I going to play? Am I doing this? It's much more... probably just something I create for myself, but it's a much more involved process for me, whereas bass playing is playing bass. I'm playing bass, I'm listening to the band. It's fun. So this is my electric bass. I'm not going to bother plugging it in. I don't even have a proper bass amp. I have a little electric battery-powered I'm sorry, all the amps are electric. I have a battery-powered line 6. It's got 4 speakers on it. I don't think it's a line 6. It's something else. It's great because it's battery-powered, so I can take it around, and it's got an XLR output. Pop it in, but I don't even have a proper bass amp anymore. But I do play bass a lot, you know, and I find it to be a good stretch on the fingers. Of course, you can hear that real well, I'm sure, but I play bass with my fingers too, not a pick. So that's a little bit of a different thing for me. You know, using a different technique. I like the sound of the fingers much more than I like a picked bass. Picked bass is aggressive, and I like that fat. Plus, I like to feel it with my fingers, you know. It's the only thing I do that with my fingers. And I don't have a problem putting my thumb on there and playing fingers. So, it's electric bass. It's not a big deal. Like I said, I have $100 in this thing. I have sold this bass twice for $200. Because, yeah, I put a lot of work in it. And I sold it for $200, and I bought it back both times for $200. And I decided finally it's not going to go anywhere, because while it was gone the second time, I ended up buying another one on eBay. That one was a newer one, a red cherry model. And but the same thing, Squier P-Bass Special. I saw it on eBay. I didn't have a bass at the time, and I kind of needed a bass, and so I bought that one. I ended up selling that one. I kept this one because this is the original. And like I said, the frets need to be worked on a little bit more. And so the other one was good to go. So this is no big deal. This is a Squier P-Bass Special. That's cool, you know. If I was going to buy another one again, I'd probably just get a P-Bass, because that's all I do. On this one, I don't know if you've ever seen these, but like real quick, there's a tone knob. I don't even know which one. I got to plug it in. There's a tone knob, and then there's a volume knob for each pickup. So you can blend in each pickup to whatever volume we want, which is kind of cool, because you can bring that jazz bass into the P-Bass pickup, or vice versa. You can put in whatever amount you want. You can get whatever sound. I find that most of the time I just use the P-Bass pickup and maybe dial in just a little of the jazz bass. The jazz bass, of course, is a punchier sound, as you all know if you play bass, and because of the location of the pickup and everything, it's a punchier sound. Sometimes I'll put just a little bit of the jazz bass, but most of the time I just use the P-Bass. So if I was ever going to buy another one of these again, I'm probably just going to get a P-Bass and be done with it, you know. Bass is a simple thing, so. But this is cool. I mean, the neck is rock solid. Hasn't budged. I actually think I had to increase relief a little bit on this one. Yeah, it's got very little relief. It's almost a flat neck. Yeah. And I know at one time I had to increase it because it backbowed a little bit because of the humidity. So, anyway, God, these are heavy, you know. This is an instrument that when I actually play it live standing up, I have a strap made from a saddle cinch. The cinch strap. And it's a big fat wide strap and I strap it on here, and it's the most comfortable strap in the world. And it looks cool if you're ever doing cowboy gigs and you've got a cinch strap on there. But God, these are heavy, you know.